Shalom, beloveds of the King. Praise Abba Yahuwah. Here we are once again, having to look at the book of Isaiah, Yeshayahu, a mighty, powerful, prophetic book that I can stand in such awe to understand that this was a prophet that really prophesied in the 700s BC, 700s before Joshua. And yet at the end of the day, it is just amazing because he was the first one prophesying. And then you get Jeremiah that was in 627 to 586 BC. And then you get Ezekiel that comes after Jeremiah to 571 BC. And what is amazing is that you will have this mighty, mighty prophet seeing things that are going to go way into the future, 100 years or so, or more sometimes, into the future. And that is already spoken in Jeremiah, spoken in Ezekiel, that Ezekiel is seen, and that we see has manifested all the things that he has said that was to come to pass, has come to pass. And then he's able to, at the same time, look into the future of prophetically what is still to come, and then able to look into the future, into things that we are going through right now. So this book has got such depth, and it speaks so deep into our hearts that I stand in awe of this mighty prophet. Because truly, he was a man that truly heard the Father's voice and truly spoke the utterances from Father's heart. And when Father needed to show him vision, he showed him vision. But he was one who truly heard and truly spoke as a true watchman. So I really stand in awe of this powerful prophetic word, and wow, I stand in awe of this revelation that the Father keeps giving us chapter after chapter as we understand the depth of the Father's heart, to understand what is the Father trying to show his people in this hour, and what he doesn't want, and what he will do because of man's rebellion. So let us pray. Abba Yahuwah, I just want to thank you, my Father. I thank you for this mighty teaching again that you are bringing through your prophets. Wow, Father, I can only just stand in awe of your faithfulness, of your love, of your grace, of your mercy, of how you have put all these things that you have brought across from your heart in these scriptures that we read, so that we cannot have any excuse when the time comes to say, I did not know. But you are in this hour wanting to open up the book of Isaiah to us, to understand the depths of your heart, to understand that which you were already saying then, which is going to be for nations, for kingdoms, for leaders, for people, for businesses, for whatever it is that you are already speaking, so that we may understand the things that you are saying to us in this hour, lessons that we truly can learn from. And so, Abba Yahuwah, I just want to thank you. I thank you for that which you are doing in this time, and for all that you are revealing to us through this book. I praise and I thank you for this in Yeshua's name. Praise Abba Father, and here we are going to look at Yeshayahu, chapter 23, and we are going to look at a prophetic message that he's going to bring to Tzor, which is Tyre, and the message concerning Tzor: howl, you ships of Tarshish, for it has been destroyed without house, without harbor, from the land of Kittim. It has been revealed to them. So this is a prophetic message to Tzor, which is what a lot of the Bibles say is Tyre. Interesting that Tyre is a rock. So the word Tzor actually means a rock. And so they thought that they were the rock. But you see, either we humble ourselves and fall, or the rock is going to be crushed. The rock that's supposed to be strong and mighty before the Father for the glory and the honor of his name is one that wants to exalt itself above the Father. And this is what Tzor has done. And so it's a Phoenician city on the Mediterranean coast. And those coming back on ships that were coming from trading. So this is a lot about business and trading. They were being told to weep because their harbor was destroyed, and the houses around them was also destroyed. And this was already told to them when they were in Kittim, which is Cyprus, modern day Cyprus. These were the rumors that they had heard. They'd heard the rumors that Tzor was being destroyed. So Tzor was one of the most famous cities of the ancient world, a Phoenician city. And it was one of the most famous, a major trading center with a large seaport. Tyre was a wealthy city, but was filled with wickedness and idolatry and evil because of their pride and their arrogance by their trading and their business sense. And so many prophets spoke against the city. And so we are going to look at what the Father is saying concerning the city. And so we look first, and we go look in Jeremiah chapter 25. In Jeremiah chapter 25, he spoke up against Tzor as well. And so in Jeremiah chapter 25, verses 22, we read, "And all the sovereigns of Tzor, and all the sovereigns of Sidon, and the sovereigns of the coastlands which are beyond the sea." So we know that he's talking to Tzor, and Sidon is also a city of this Phoenician city of Tzor. And if we look at verse 27, this is the word that is being brought against them. "And you shall say to them, Thus says Yahuwah of hosts, the Eluah of Israel, drink, be drunk, and vomit." So you see, what do we do when we drink and we get drunk? We're going to vomit, fall, and rise no more because of the sword which I'm sending among you. "And it shall be when they refuse to take the cup from your hand to drink, then you shall say to them, Thus says Yahuwah of hosts, you shall drink." So the Father was declaring a judgment upon them, and they were going to have to drink from the cup that he has already prophesied against them. So understand, this was Jeremiah that came in the time of 627 to 586. That is when he was declaring this scripture, but this was already declared in the 700s BC by Yeshayahu. So if we have a look at Zechariah chapter 9. And so we have a look at Zechariah chapter 9, verses 2 to 4, and it says, "And Hamath also borders on it, Tzor and Sidon, though they are very wise. For Tsor built herself a tower, heaped up silver like the dust, and gold like the mud of the streets. See, Yahuwah shall dispossess her, and he shall strike her power in the sea, and she shall be consumed by fire. So you see, they were a city that really accumulated much wealth. They had the wisdom, they had the trade, they had the wealth, they had all of that because they were a very prosperous nation, a nation that really was prosperous in silver and gold, in wisdom and power and all of that they had acquired from the trading that they were doing. So you can say they were mighty businessmen that were acquiring all this wealth from the trade in that area of those coastal regions around the Mediterranean Sea. And so we continue to read in Isaiah. And so we read Isaiah chapter 23, verse 3, and it says, "And on great waters," and so, from verse 2, "Be silent, you inhabitants of the coastland, you merchants of Sidon, who passed over the sea, they filled you. And on great waters, the grain of Shihur, the harvest of the river, was her increase, and she was a marketplace for the nation." So understand, she was a business. She was an enterprise. So you can say this massive enterprise. This city was an enterprise of a marketplace. So the river Shihur is, it means dock. And it's the river on the east border of Egypt. So it was right there on the border of Egypt and the branch of the Nile. So understand the trading that was going on inland with Egypt and the trading going on along the sea coast around the city. And then verse 4 says, "Be ashamed, O Sidon, for the sea has spoken, the stronghold of the sea, saying, I have not labored, nor brought forth children, neither have I reared young men, brought up maidens." So Sidon was the mother city of Tyre that would be ashamed. And so this Sidon was the mother city. It was the mother city of Tsor, of Tyre. Verse 5, "Like the report of Mitzrayim, they too are grieved at the report of Tsor." So Egypt would be greatly grieved when Tsor fell, because Egypt depended on Tsor's shipping expertise. And they would lose a very important trading market and a partner. Because understand, they were relying on Tsor to be able to export their goods and the trading that was going on. So this is how it was, all this trading and this exporting. And understand, this was a huge corporation for all the trading and the marketing, a huge enterprise that was taking place over here. And it says in verse 6, "Pass over to Tarshish, wail, you inhabitants of the coastland." So you see, now it passed over to Tarshish. And Tarshish is, again, those coastlands there, along Spain, that whole area of the Mediterranean. So normally the Tarshish is seen as Spain, that area around there. And he says, "Pass over Tarshish well, you inhabitants of the coastland." So even the inhabitants of the coastland, they are going to wail. Why? Because all of a sudden, this place that was for this marketing that they were doing and all this trading and all the wealth that they're making is going to crash. "Is this your city of revelry, whose antiquity is from days of old, whose feet carried her far off to sojourn. It's like I said, Isaiah is a serious poet, and he can put things in such a way. And so what is he saying? This is an ancient city. This is an ancient city. It is a revelry, which is an ancient city, a joyous, jubilant place. So it is an ancient city that is joyous, it's jubilant, who sent out many merchants to the far lands. So, the Phoenicians, they went on the ships to far lands. I mean, the Phoenicians came all the way down, even to South Africa. They came, when we were in Cape Agulhas, we saw how these Phoenicians, they traveled to all the different places. So they sent out merchants all over. They were traders. They were able to trade. Are the esteem of the earth. So you see, now look at what he says. Carried her far off to sojourn. Who has counseled this against Tsor, the crowning city, whose merchants are chiefs, whose traders are the esteemed of the earth. So understand, they went all over, these Phoenicians. These people from this Tsor, this Phoenician city, they went on ships and they did trading and they went all over. And Yahuwah has brought this upon Tsor because of their pride and their arrogance. So we're going to look at this. They were a city that was, they were a mighty, this is an ancient city that was joyous, that was jubilant. And they sent out many merchants to these far lands all over. But now we get to verse 9. And in verse 9, what does it say? So he says in verse 8, who counseled this against Tsor, the crowning city, whose merchants are chiefs, whose traders are the esteemed of the earth. Yahuwah of hosts has counseled it. So he is the one who's spoken. To defile the pride of all splendor and to shame all the esteemed of the earth. So he's the one that's going to bring it low. And where we really need to have a look at this, if you really want to understand what the Father has to say about Tsor, the Father really speaks extensively to Tsor in Ezekiel. Ezekiel is going to seriously prophesy against Tsor, and if you want to really read it in detail, you can go read chapter 26, chapter 27, chapter 26, 27, and chapter 28 of Ezekiel. But we are going to just look at a few scriptures so that we can, understand exactly what the Father is saying here and why he's bringing destruction upon them, for us to be able to understand a little bit more the detail. And he's saying in Ezekiel 27 from verse 2, now, son of man, take up a lamentation for Tsor, and you shall say to Tsor, you who dwell at the entrance of the sea, merchant of the peoples on many coastlands, thus said the Master Yahuwah, O Tsor, you yourself have said, I am perfect in loveliness. So do you see, this is eventually what happens with a lot of businessmen who raise themselves up and start to think that it is it's the glory of everything that they have achieved out of the works of their hands. And these were mighty merchants. They were really mighty merchants, and they were making they were trading in silver and gold, in timber, in so many things that they were trading, textiles, everything they were trading. And now they have elated themselves and said, I am perfect in loveliness. And so understand, a lot of Isaiah has really spoken up against leaders, spoken up against these cities and businesses and leaders and kings. And this is a lot of what Isaiah, through the mouth, Abba Yahuwah, through the mouth of Isaiah, is prophesying against a lot of the leadership. And so if we really want to understand Father's heart for leadership, to how he sees business leaders, how he sees leaders that lead nations, leaders that are going to lead his people, all different kinds of leaders, we are understanding here that what he's speaking up against, these are the people that are going to raise themselves up as leaders for my people around. And what have they done? And they said, I am perfect in loveliness. Your borders are in the heart of the seas. Your builders have perfected your loveliness. They have made all your timber of fir trees from Sinir. They took a cedar from Lebanon to make a mast for you. So understand, this is everything that they are doing in all this trading that they are busy. It's the builders, it's the trading that they do. There's the silver and the gold. You see, if you look down at verse 12, Tarshish was your merchant because of your great wealth. They gave you silver, iron, tin, lead for your merchandise. So you see, they had the merchandise, and Tarshish was giving them silver and iron and tin and lead for the merchandise that they were busy trading with. So this is a great enterprise. This is a market trading of what is going on. And so if we have a look at Ezekiel chapter 28, now he really starts to speak up from verses 2 to 10, and he says, Son of man, say to the prince of Tsor, thus said the Master Yahuwah, because your heart is lifted up and you say, I am Al. I sit in the seat of Eloah, in the heart of the seas, whereas you are a man and not Eloah, though you set your heart as the heart of Eloah. Look, are you wiser than Daniel? Has no secret been hidden from you? By your wisdom and your understanding, you have made riches. So you see, many times Father gives the know-how, and he gives wisdom, and he gives the ability to these people, to these leaders, to these traders, to these people that will run enterprises, in how to be able to make wealth, in how to trade, in how to bring in the finances. So he says, look, are you wiser than Daniel? By your wisdom and your understanding, you have made riches for yourself and gathered gold and silver into your treasuries. So you see, again, what is Abba Yahuwah's problem? The fact that they are making riches for themselves. And they gather gold and silver into your treasuries. You see, what do these leaders of these nations, these leaders of these big enterprises do? They want to pay their staff little amount of money because they take more for themselves. So they want to have people that become slaves to them, and they enrich themselves. And this is what we see, what goes on in a lot of businesses. So they want to be slave drivers. So you'll get some of these places, like I was just speaking to my son today, and how he was telling me how in his company they are slave driving him because he's having to work all these long hours and after hours and everything, because at the end of the day they don't want to employ more staff in order to pay more salaries, so they will grind the person to the bone in order so that they can give them their pound of flesh, but they will not pay them more salaries. But the more that they make is the more for themselves. And this is exactly what is going on over here. And these are the things that the Father starts to speak up against. And that is why we are learning these things. We are reading these things for us to understand. Father is interested in everything. And everybody's going to have to stand before the Father and give an account. And that's why the Father's bringing his judgments in these last days. That's why the Father's bringing his judgments on the Babylonian system, because the Babylonian system is milking the people dry. And this is exactly what this elite of this world are doing. They're bringing slave driving to people, and they're wanting to eliminate a people group so that they can enrich themselves even more. So he says, by your wisdom and your understanding you have made riches for yourself and gathered gold and silver into your treasuries. But your great wisdom, by your trade you have increased your riches. By your great wisdom, by your trade you have increased your riches, and your heart is lifted up because of your riches. So you see what lands up happening. Because the more wealth you acquire, the more prideful you start to become, thinking that it is your hard work and everything that you have done. Remember what we read yesterday. The Father makes the rich and the poor. Therefore, thus said the Master Yahuwah, because you have set your heart as the heart of a lure, therefore see, I'm bringing against you strangers, the ruthless ones of the nations, and they shall draw their swords against the loveliness of your wisdom, and they shall profane your splendor. So you see, what is going to come? When the Father's going to bring the sword is going to come up against this whole Babylonian system, which is what this is. This whole city of Tsor is like a Babylonian system. Understand, he's going against every city. He's speaking city by city. But in the last days, the Father is not speaking about city by city, but he's going to judge every nation of the world. Oh, don't worry, we're going to get into that tomorrow when we get to chapter 24, where he's going to judge the nations of the world. And so everything is going to be weighed in the scales, and he's going to judge it. Down into the pit they shall bring you, and you shall die the death of the slain in the heart of the seas. Would you still say before him who slays you, I am Eloah, whereas you are man and not Al, in the hand of him who kills you? The death of the uncircumcised you shall die. By the death of the uncircumcised you shall die, by the hand of foreigners, for I have spoken, declares the Master Yahuwah. And so this is the Father's judgment declared against Tsor, because you see, Nebuchadnezzar is the one who's going to come and bring destruction against them. But the same one that brought the destruction a little bit later in Daniel, then we start to read, he also exalted himself and said, all of this is of my doing, my kingdom, what I have achieved. And so you've got these skyscrapers and you've got all these big empires where these people pride themselves in what they have acquired. But this is why the Father is now bringing this word, because it's all going to shake. And he's going to bring it all down to the ground. He's going to flatten it and level it and say, you will understand that I am the one who has raised you up, and I will be the one to bring you down at the appointed time, because these horses are riding. These horses are going to bring the destruction that needs to be brought down. And all this monetary system and all these things are going to crash in the end. So let us go look, and we continue. Isaiah chapter 23. And so verse 10 says, overflow through your land like the river, O daughter of Tarshish. There is no more strength. You see, nothing restricts Tarshish. Nothing is going to restrict it now. And it says nothing is restricting it. So the people of Tarshish, nothing is restricting it. You can now flow freely over, just like this river. Just like the river Nile will overflow. Nothing is going to restrict you anymore, because what? There is no more strength. Their strength will be destroyed. There's no more strength. There's no more power. He has stretched out his hand over the sea. He shook the reins. Yahuwah has given a command against Canaan to destroy its strongholds. So understand, He, Abba Yahuwah, has stretched out his hand over the sea. He shook the rains. Yahuwah has given a command. So understand, once again, he's going to shake the heavens and the earth. He is going to shake all things. And that is why I'm saying there is going to be a great reset that is coming, and all the financial systems are going to crash, and all these monetary systems and all these things that people have put their trust and their faith in is going to crash. It's all going to crash. We're coming to the end of a Shemitah year, and if you go back in history and see, every single time, 2008, 2015, there was financial crashes that came. Now we are in 2022. The Shemitah year comes to an end in September 2022. We will be at the end of another Shemitah year. So there is a definite economical crash coming, and this will be the one that is going to destroy the financial system completely. But this is what has been spoken by the mouths of prophets, by the mouths of watchmen that have been warning, but people do not heed the warning. And he says in verse 11, so what Yahuwah is saying, he has stretched out his hand over the sea. He has made kingdoms tremble. He has given a command that he is going to break the strongholds of Canaan. All the strongholds of Canaan will be destroyed. The Father is going to shake every single thing, every foundation, everything that has been established, every tree not planted by Abba Yahuwah is going to be uprooted. Everything that is going to shake will shake. Because he wants his people to come back to putting their trust and their faith in him. Father has been warning and warning and warning, asking people to turn, repent, turn back to him. And because they have not, he's going to shake. Haggai chapter 2 says, once again, he will shake the heavens and the earth. Verse 12, and he said, never again shall you exult, O you oppressed maiden, daughter of Sidon. Arise, pass over Kittim, even there you shall find no rest. So what is he saying? Never again will you exult, will you triumph, will you exult, will you rejoice. Not even Kittim, not even Cyprus would they find, not even in Kittim, not even in Cyprus would they find rest. So when he's going to bring the shaking, we are not going to find rest in anything that we've put our trust and our faith in. The only thing that we are going to find rest in is going to be in him alone. This is a very harsh rebuke by Abba Yahuwah. This is a harsh rebuke. This is a harsh rebuke for us, to be able to understand that Yahuwah hates pride. And there was a pride that came with Tzor. There was a pride. They lifted themselves up in their heart. Pride separates people from Yahuwah, and he will not tolerate it. Pride will come before a fall. And this is the pride that is over the nations of the world. This is the pride over the enterprises. This is the pride over the marketplace. There is pride and arrogance. And he says he will not tolerate it. So we are to examine our lives. We must realize that all that we have comes from Yahuwah. All our successes, all our accomplishments, all our finances, everything that we possess, everything belongs to him. Nothing is ours. We cannot put it in a little nest and say, well, this is mine. Nothing is ours. Everything belongs to him. Everything is for the glory and the honor of his name. And so we must understand all of this is for his glory. It's his. We have no reason to take pride in ourselves. We have no reason to take pride in anything that we have done or in anything that we have achieved, because it is all about him. And if you read a little bit later in Ezekiel chapter 28, you will understand that then he starts to speak about the devil, how he elated himself and how he wanted to raise himself up in the heavens, and how he was a beautiful cherubim made up of many, many jewels, and how he also wanted to become great. And so even in the body of Messiah, we look at these mighty enterprises, because they're not churches. They've become businesses. These churches are they're not churches, they're businesses. Businesses. And they've become enterprises, and they've put their name attached to it. And now they have built empires for themselves. And they've elated themselves, and they've raised themselves up, and they've now attached their name to their big ministries. And so even in the house of Yahuwah, even in the church, there's a defilement where his leaders have raised themselves up and now become filled with pride and arrogance, where they think it's about them. We need to go lower. We need to humble ourselves to understand we are nothing. It's all about him. And if we do anything, it's only because of his grace. And therefore we need to be humbled before him to understand it is only by his grace that he will even use a person, not because of anything special that we've done. Because at the end of the day, it's all about Yahushua. And the more we keep focused on Yahushua, the less we go low, the less we think about ourselves, the lower we go. So in verse 13, he says, see the land of Kasdim. This people did not exist. So you see, these Chaldeans, see the land of the Chaldeans. This people did not exist. Ashur founded it from wild beasts of the desert. They set up their siege towers. They demolished her places and made her a ruin. And so what does he say now in verse 14? Weep, wail, howl, you ships of Tarshish, for your stronghold is laid waste. Your stronghold has been destroyed. Verse 15. And in that day it shall be that Sor is forgotten 70 years, according to the days of one sovereign. At the end of 70 years it shall be to Sor as in the song of the whore. How interesting it is that even Israel went into exile for 70 years. So Israel, the land had to rest and go into exile because of their idolatry and abomination, 70 years. And to Tzor, for 70 years, the land will go into it will become a wasteland. And in that day it shall be that Tzor is forgotten. So it will be a forgotten city, 70 years, according to the days of one sovereign. And at the end of 70 years it shall be to Tzor as in the song of the whore. Take a lyre, go about the city, you forgotten whore. Make sweet playing, sing many songs, so that you might be remembered. And if we go look and we see that in this was basically fulfilled in 572, that it laid waste, it was desolate for 70 years, and then the new city built on was then in the land, in the island, was taken by Alexander the Great in 332 BC. And so it was then reinstated again in 332 BC. And so this did happen. It was taken over by Nebuchadnezzar that came to be able to take it over. And so it says, take a lie, go about the city, you forgotten whore, make a sweet playing, sing many songs so that you might be remembered. And so if we have a look in verse 17, it says, and at the end of 70 years, it shall be that Yahuwah visits Tzor. So at the end of 70 years, Abba Yahuwah visits Tzor, and she shall return to her harlot fees and commit whoring with all the rains of the earth on the face of the soil. So once again, she will become a mighty trading city, and she will start her trading again after 70 years. She will trade again. And isn't it interesting? Because our Messiah went to Tzor. And so if we have a look at the city, was definitely reinstated, because if we go to Matthew chapter 15 verse 21, and it says, and Yahushua went out from there and withdrew to the parts of Tzor and Sidon. So he went out and he withdrew to the parts of Tzor and Sidon. So here he was in the city again of Tzor and Sidon. And see, a woman of Canaan came from those borders and cried to him, saying, have compassion on me, O Master, son of David, my daughter is badly demon-possessed. Now understand, she's a Canaanite. She is not an Israelite. But he did not answer her a word, and his taught ones came and asked him, saying, send her away, because she cries after us. And he answering said, I was not sent except for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So you see, she's not one that is of the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and this is the people whom he has been sent for. Yet, when he dies, he's going to gather all. He's going to, through his blood, now graft us all into that house. But when he came, he started his ministry in the northern part of the land, because he was crying out for those lost sheep of the house of Israel, the ones that have gone astray, the ones that have been in the total dispersion. But she came and was bowing to him, saying, Master, help me. And he answering said, it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. But she said, yes, Master, even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table. And Yahushua answering said to her, O woman, your belief is great. Let it be to you as you desire. And her daughter was healed from that hour. So isn't it interesting? In this very place of Tzor, he reaches out to a Canaanite woman and brings deliverance. And here shows how there was going to be a restitution that's going to come, that he is going to come even for those in the outer parts, that is not going to be part, those that are going to be grafted in to the house of Israel. And so here already he's extending out his hand to those that are not of the house of Israel. And then if we have a look at Shaul, Paul was also in Tzor. And if we have a look in Acts chapter 21, in Acts chapter 21 from verses 3 to 6, and it says, and having sighted Cyprus, okay, let's read from verse 2, and having found a ship passing over to Phoenicia, he went abroad and set sail, and having sighted Cyprus, and having passed it on the left, we sailed to Syria, and landed at Tzor, for the ship was to unload her cargo there, and having found taught ones, he remained there 7 days, and they told Shaul through the Spirit not to go up to Jerusalem. So understand, there were taught ones in Tzor. So he had ministered to people in Tsor that had given their lives and that were followers of Yahushua in Tsor. So here we see that even Shaul was in Tsor, and so they were faithful servants of the Father in Tsor. Because even Yahushua, how do we know that this Canaanite woman, through what had happened, I'm sure she must have gone and spread a message as well. And Shaul himself had gone to these places, and the disciples were going into these places as they were told to go into the nations and spread the gospel, teaching them, discipling them. And so we see that there are faithful disciples that are there. And so we continue to read. And it says, and so we read verse 17 again, and at the end of 70 years it shall be that Yahuwah visits Tsor, and she shall return to her harlot fee, and commit whoring with all the rains of the earth on the face of the soil. And this is a very interesting scripture, verse 18. And her goods and her harlot fee shall be set apart for Yahuwah. So imagine, he's going to visit it, and it's going to again continue its trading like it was, doing its harlotry. But it starts by saying, at the end of 70 years, it shall be that Yahuwah visits Tsor. And so when he visits her, even though she's doing trading, listen to what happens. And her goods and her harlot fees shall be set apart for Yahuwah, not treasured nor laid up for her gain. So no longer shall she take the finances for herself, to enrich herself, to store up for herself, but is for those who dwell before Yahuwah. So it's going to be distributed for those that dwell before Yahuwah, to eat sufficiently and for a choice covering. Now I had to go look at this in a few scriptures because the Father really wanted me to get a better understanding of this, because I thought, my Father, what is he trying to say here? And so I think this was in the Complete Jewish Bible. It says, but her goods and her merchandise and her profits will be dedicated to Yahuwah. They will not be stored up or hoarded. So do you see, are people gaining finances to hoard it up for themselves? Because her profits will be for those living in Yahuwah's presence, so that they can eat their fill and wear fine clothing. It's for his priests. So if we have a look, I happened to go look at it again. Father said, go look at it in others. And so in the NIV, it says, yet her profit and her earnings will be set apart for Yahuwah. They will not be stored up or hoarded. Her profits will go to those who live before Yahuwah for abundant food and fine clothes. The Amplified says, but her gain and her hire, the profits of Tyre, new prosperity, will be dedicated to Yahuwah eventually. It will not be treasured or stored up for her gain, will be used for those who dwell in the presence of Yahuwah, the ministers, that they may eat sufficiently and have durable and stately clothing suitable for those who minister at Yahuwah's altar. And so this is when I sat and I looked at this and I thought, well, Father, I really am going to pray this into coming into fulfillment, because is this an overview of what Father's trying to show us in what is supposed to happen with the transfer of the wealth that is supposed to take place, so that Father can build his kingdom. There are places of refuge that the Father is wanting to establish for his people that need to dwell in his presence. But where is the wealth that needs to come into those places? This is the thing. Because Joseph had to prepare for the famine that was coming to preserve life. And so there will be a great judgment that's going to come upon the kings that have not prepared for Yahuwah's people. And so it was very interesting, because in the Living Translation it says, but in the end, her businesses will give their profits to Yahuwah. Her wealth will not be hoarded, but will be used to provide good food and fine clothing. So we will have the food and everything that is going to be needed for Yahuwah's priests that are going to be set apart for him in these last days, to do the work to preserve life for him. And so I thought, wow, Father, you are speaking very powerfully here with this scripture. And so Father is really bringing a harsh word, because at the end of the day, this is why there's great judgment going to come upon the earth, and that is why he's going to shake the foundations of the earth. And that is why Babylon is going to crash, because of the merchants. If we have a look and see, I'm just being reminded, in Revelation chapter 18, it speaks about the merchants. And so, look and see what it says in Revelation chapter 18, verse 3. Because all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her whoring, and the sovereigns of the earth have committed whoring with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the power of their riotous living, enriching themselves. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out from her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive her plagues. And this is what is coming. And that is why Isaiah is prophesying things that's happening to a city here. But what the Father is wanting me to be able to share is the fact that Isaiah's prophecy is going to be extended, because these prophecies are going to be the judgment upon the nations of the world. And you see the same pride and arrogance upon Tsor is the same pride and arrogance within the nations of the world today. That is the symbol of a system called a Babylonian system. This is what we must understand. So Babylon is just not going to be one city that's going to be destroyed. Yes, it's going to be able to, must probably be one nation, but it's going to be able to be the rest of the nations of the world are going to go down with it. Understand, if there is a financial crash in America with the dollar, it will affect every single nation of the world. Look and see, just between a war that happened between Russia and Ukraine, did it not affect the nations of the world? Yes, it did. It affected our oil. It affected our petrol price. It affected everything, because if something happens to the nations of where they are the merchants supplying the goods to the rest of the other nations, they will all come under the judgment too. And this is what we must understand. So may Abba bless you all. May you all have a blessed week. Shalom, shalom.